So as you see, for both example, real GDP increased and moved us closer to potential, which was what we wanted. And more productivity means more jobs, so that's good. In the Keynesian model, price level increased. So that means maybe we could feel a tiny bit of inflation, so maybe that would be a little bit painful for consumers. In this model, price level decreased, so maybe things were a little bit cheaper, maybe that's less painful for consumers, but employees who took these lower wages, they're feeling the pain. And this might be a little bit more painful for consumers up here in this Keynesian model. And also, if the government's not collecting as much in taxes, and if the government is increasing government consumption expenditures, us taxpayers will have to pay for that later down the road. Okay, so that's how these two different economic styles would solve the problem of recessionary gap. Moving forward, let's read this ASAD model and see what's happening in the economy. Current state of the economy is the intersection between AD, short run AS, right here, and we're actually producing beyond our potential GDP. So if we're producing more than potential, that means pretty much everyone has jobs. Maybe some of you guys are working a full-time job and a couple part-time jobs, but the unemployment rate is very low. So if the unemployment rate at potential is 4 to 5%, the unemployment rate here at this Y1 would be even less than that, maybe 2%. So who are the types of people that would be unemployed in this situation? Probably people who are structurally unemployed. We learned in our unemployment chapter, chapter 8, that the natural rate of unemployment is made up of people who are structurally unemployed plus those who are frictionally unemployed. Structural unemployment means you don't have skills that society is demanding. Frictional unemployment pretty much just means you have skills and you're in between jobs, trying to find a better job. So if most of us have jobs, the few of them that don't have jobs are probably this group of people with minimal skills. We sometimes say that the economy is overheating when it's beyond potential, and that's not necessarily good for the economy. Do you want to work for the rest of your life 2 jobs? Maybe not. So actual GDP at Y1 is greater than potential. It's high relative to potential. And if we're producing so much, many people have jobs, unemployment is low relative to potential. And if real GDP, if the short-run aggregate supply curve and the aggregate demand curve intersect to the right of our long-run aggregate supply curve, to the right of potential, we call this an inflationary gap. Okay, how would Keynes solve this? How would classical solve this? So Keynes would say increase taxes or cut government spending. Either of those solutions would shift our short-run aggregate supply curve backwards and to the left. Okay. From AD1 back into the left to AD2. So we used to be producing this amount at Y1, now we're pretty much producing potential. So back to our happy place where we want to be. How would a classical economist suggest we solve this problem? Through self-adjustment, and we're talking about wage manipulation. So if you get out of college and you have this great idea for an awesome startup business, but the only people that are available in the pool are structurally unemployed people with no skills, and so they're finding it very hard to find a job, that might not be the person that you want for this new high-tech startup that you're doing. How can you get hardworking and intelligent people to come be part of your business? Simple. Offer them higher wages or better benefits. When you offer them higher wages, what happens to your input prices, your cost of production? Cost of production goes up. When cost of production goes up, profit per unit goes down and willingness to supply goes down. So the short-run aggregate supply curve will shift backwards and to the left. Oh, sorry, there we are. Copy my graph in here for you. Short-run aggregate supply curve shifting backwards and to the left, moving us closer to potential. So we see here in either case, no matter if the economists choose to solve it as Keynesian would and Keynesian's methods or as classicals would, in either example, real GDP falls back to our happy place where we want it to. For the Keynesian example, price level fell. In the classical example, price level increased. Okay, so two different ways of solving the problem. Often economists say I'm either a Keynesian or a classical, but I think that both methods are very appropriate at different times within the economy. This last little image that we have is pretty much saying, it asks a question, what would happen if we stimulated aggregate demand in these different zones along our short-run aggregate supply curve? Hang on one second. Okay, sorry about that. I had to pause you so that I could figure out how to work my pen. Okay. So if we are in the Keynesian zone and we have an increase in aggregate demand, let's say from aggregate demand K to this new one, check mark, that's check mark, we see that our level of real GDP increased by quite a bit and our price level barely increased. So this is really good for the economy because we see growth in GDP, people have jobs, and we don't see as much pain as in price level rising. If we're in this other zone, this intermediate zone, and we're starting at aggregate demand I, and we have an increase in aggregate demand, something happens, aggregate demand shifts out to the right, we'll call this one aggregate demand smiley face. Yep, that's a smiley face, great, okay. We see real GDP increases at about a proportionate rate as price level is also increasing. So the economy is feeling happier because GDP is increasing, but at the same time we do feel some pain in this increase in price level. We know the percentage change in price level over time gives us information about inflation. Okay, or if we were starting here at this aggregate demand curve, aggregate demand N, and something happens and it stimulates the aggregate demand curve and we shift outward and to the right, we see from this original level of GDP right here. Oh my God. Oh, I thought I didn't play the video. Sorry. We see from that original level of real GDP that real GDP increased by just a tiny amount and price level increased by a whole lot. Okay, I hope this video helped. Send me an email if you have any questions about it. Have a great day.